All right. Hello there. My name is Samuel Dolesque. I am a co-founder of the Traditional Dream Factory. And today I'm here to talk a little bit about our token model and this pioneering concept that we've been building for the last 2-3 years, which is how can we take land into stewardship. So today I'm going to talk to you about this model of taking land into stewardship. What does it mean? How do we do it? How do we actually ensure that land gets put into conservation and that it gets regenerated and conserved for future generations? I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the benefits of the TDF token and why you might want to buy some, and just how the whole dynamic of the token work. And I will dive deep into the tokenomics, how we set up the total supply, how the pricing function works, etc., etc. But first, let me just tell you a little bit about TDF. You probably heard about it by now since you're on our website. But TDF is short for the Traditional Dream Factory. It's a regenerative co-living and co-housing village in Alentejo in Portugal. It's an hour and a half south of Lisbon. And we're really just here trying to build our dream home. And basically, we're looking for 300 dreamers who want to co-own this beautiful property together with us and who want to create this new way of living together. And we set the foot on land here almost 3 years ago. We found this property. And since then, we've gone on a journey to see what does it actually take to build a regenerative village that is owned by the commons. And the TDF token plays a central role in that. And we kind of came up with this new concept of how we can do land conservation. And the idea is to use the power of real estate, to use the financial resources that are locked in the real estate system around the world, which is probably the biggest market. We're talking about trillions of dollars. And how can we shift just like a fraction of that massive market into the realm of conservation? So about a year and a half ago, we established the OASA Association. The OASA Association operates out of Switzerland. It's a non-profit whose purpose is to conserve and to regenerate land. It operates a little bit in a similar way to Land Trust. Unfortunately, Land Trusts are not an existing vehicle in Portugal, so we couldn't go for that option. So we had to go with an option which also enabled us to bind a sense of access and governance into the blockchain, because we want to be able to distribute that access and governance to our community and to those 300 dreamers that we're seeking to build this place together. So this model of exit into the commons, why did we decide to do that? And why did we decide to add this whole complexity of Web3 into something already complex, like building a regenerative village and building a community of people living together on a land? Well, our belief is that by using technology, we can actually streamline and build in cultural and governance processes into a platform that enables a group of people to live together in a more cohesive way. And the idea is that when you join the village, you are basically able to gain progressive access into this village. You can earn the token through your own work or through financial resources, anything that is required to make this village a reality. And then once you're part of this village, the idea is that the more time that you spend and the more work that you put into this village, the more we want to reward you with the capacity to take action and to make decisions in how this village evolves. And so this token model that we've been developing, we've also open sourced a lot of the ideas and frameworks. So if you are yourself starting a regenerative village and you would like to potentially do an exit into the commons, I highly recommend you speak with Closer. I am also a co-founder of Closer, but Closer is a platform that we have been embedding and building in these cultural processes that enables any community to launch a token to give access and governance right over real estate. So if you are a regenerative village and you would like to use this technology, you can reach out to me. But furthermore, I think there's a lot of exploration that still needs to be done in how we can actually use Web3 to better organize ourselves, to better coordinate around stewardship of land. And in the realm of DAOs, decentralized autonomous organization, which we will touch a little bit upon in this video, there has been a lot of innovation in the governance space and trying to see how can we create governance models that are more just, more reliable, and that gives more contextual-based decisions that aren't simply based on, say, one person, one vote, or majority voting, but that can really distribute governance down to things like how much time do you spend in a place, or how much weight did you put into something, which we think are more relevant factors to distributing governance rights. And at the same time, when in building this DAO, we really try to avoid the pitfall of building an aristocracy where token holders would be holding the entire power over the project. So while token holdage is representative in our governance model, the idea is that over time we want to transition into a model where the time that you spend and the work that you put into the project become more relevant as opposed to simply the financial stakes that you hold in the project. Okay, so first of all, what is a DAO? What is a decentralized autonomous organization? Well, a DAO is an organization that uses the internet to organize a group of humans around coordinating around a certain purpose. And in order for us to take action in this world, generally we tend to require money. So a DAO generally has a multisig or a treasury associated with it. And then this treasury can then be governed by a group of people that are coordinated on the internet. In our case, our DAO, we're using Snapshot as a governance protocol, but you can use, there's many protocols in which you can set up these kind of governance tools. And the main idea is that you want to basically catalyze action around the purpose of your DAO, similar to a company or a nonprofit that have a certain purpose. A DAO is simply a way to organize humans using digital tools in order to do this cooperation. While a DAO might not necessarily have a legal entity, you have a lot of DAOs that are not associated with a company or an association. They're simply a protocol that lives on the internet. This can come a little bit into conflict if you are trying to work with things in the real world. And in fact, and I'm not a legal expert, so I will not advise you on it. I recommend that you talk to a lawyer before trying to set up a DAO. But basically, if you set up a DAO that doesn't have any kind of legal representation in the real world, that means that you're putting all of the members of the DAO individually to be liable to the actions of this DAO. And in our case, since we have to do ownership of land, it is probably one of the most intricate legal operations that we can do. And so we had to build a whole legal structure around how can we actually own land collectively as a group of individuals that are united around this purpose of regeneration and conservation of land. And so for this purpose, after having talked to numerous lawyers in many jurisdictions around the world, we settled on Switzerland as being a good home for our blockchain operations. And so we registered OASA as a Swiss Verein, a nonprofit, with a purpose to conserve and to regenerate land. And so this is the purpose of the DAO. And ultimately, if you end up buying tokens or contributing in other ways to our project, what you ultimately do is that you help us support the conservation and restoration of land. The objective of OASA is to conserve 100,000 hectares globally. So we're really looking at this real estate model and how can that play into serving a role in the realm of conservation. And right now we're building the first prototype in Portugal. This is what the traditional Dream Factory is. It's a prototype for building a regenerative way of life that uses blockchain technology in order to distribute access rights and governance on-chain. And one of the concepts of OASA is that we're taking away the concept of ownership and transitioning it into stewardship. What does that mean? Well, ownership comes from the Latin law, which is the right to use, the right to get the fruit of, and the right to destroy. That's not really a definition that we identify with as a collective. And so we want to go back to another sense of care, which is a sense of stewardship. And in ancient civilizations, the right of stewardship was the right to care for and the right to get the fruit of. And that is more of a definition of land holdage that we want to identify with. And so when you operate within OASA principles, within the OASA lands, which means that if you are a TDF member, if you're a TDF steward, or TDF as a whole, needs to abide by our regenerative land stewardship principles. Those principles include things like 50% of the land that will be rewilded and conserved, 45% of the land which is reserved for regenerative agriculture and edible landscapes, and only 5% of the lands that ever gets developed as housing. Why do we set those numbers? Well, primarily we want to help support conservation and we want to help restore wildlife. The planet has lost over 70% of all wildlife over the last 40 years. We're in the middle of a biodiversity crisis. We're in the middle of a meta crisis. There's carbon emissions, there is climate change, there's floodings, there's drought, there's desertification. We're trying to compensate for some of these natural factors by building natural solutions such as reforestation, rewildering, conservation of land, and trying to use technology to track and how we are actually having an impact on these realms. Alright, so now let's dive into the specifics of the TDF token. First of all, what is the purpose of the TDF token? The purpose of the TDF token was to take this real estate property that we're developing, where we're building 14 suites, 4 studios, a house, and we have glamping accommodation, and there's spaces for camper vans. And so this is a total occupancy of the space. And so the role of the token is simply to distribute the access to all of these spaces to a community of 300 or so members that we're seeking to attract to be co-owning the space. And so the way that we did it was simply by counting up all of these different accommodation, assigning them a certain token values that you need to lock per night. And so one TDF token gives you access to stay at TDF one night per year forever in a basic accommodation. So if you want to stay, say, in a shared suite, then you can simply buy one token and that will enable you to stay one night every year forever. And for example, if you want to stay in a private suite, there'll be 2 tokens. If you want to stay in a studio, there'll be 3 tokens, or in a house, there'll be 5 tokens. And then each of these spaces can also accommodate a certain number of people. So for example, if you have a family, maybe 2 kids, and you're a couple, you might want to rent a house, which would cost you 5 tokens per night. And so if you want to come and spend 1 week, you would have to buy 35 tokens, and then you are able to come and spend 1 week in the house per year forever. So that's really the baseline of how the TDF token operates. And so the total supply is then just simply calculated by adding all of these occupancies times the number of nights required. In our case, it brings us to 18,600 tokens. That is the total available occupancy, how many people we can host every year. And then based on this, you are then able to come and stay, and it is then a marketplace. So once you have your token, in order to get access to bookings, if you want to get access to instant book, similar to Airbnb, you have to become a member and you have to go through the membership process. However, you can already use your tokens to book a trial and to come and book those 2 week stays that you need to come in order to qualify to become a member. So that gives us a total supply of 18,600 tokens. The ways that we price the tokens was by looking at what is the total development cost of this property. The initial buildings cost us 200,000 euros, and the remainder of the land that we have the option to purchase cost 550,000 euros. And then we have a total real estate development cost, including the legal fees, the technology, and so on, of roughly 4 million euros. It's a 4 million real estate development project. So then we take the 18,600 tokens and we divide that 4 million euros with it, and that gives us an initial price per token of 222 euros. And so that gives us a base price of the token, and now we then put the token on a sale bonding curve, which means that for every token sold, the price will increase a little bit, and the price will go up to a certain maximum, which is like 400 and something euros, although those numbers can be adjusted. And so depending on, for example, if the construction cost goes up quicker, or if we have other costs that haven't been accounted for, we can then adjust this curve over time to account for these changes. And now the difference between the initial price of 222 and whatever the ending cost is, that gives us our safety buffer. And in our model, we calculated a 1 million safety buffer, which means that we're raising effectively 5 million euros by selling all of the tokens, which gives us this extra 1 million euros for things that we hadn't accounted for. And so essentially what that means is that your TDF token corresponds to the capital cost of developing this property. Now that means that it doesn't cost you 222 euros to spend a night at TDF. It means that this is simply the cost of real estate development. And now this is your stake. This is how much access rights you actually own in the space. And so by buying the token is an easy way for you to get access rights without needing to, say, purchase land, go through a notary, go through all the procedures that you generally have to do in order to buy land. But it's a way to get a timeshare access into this property with your community, and this timeshare access keeps its value. So you can come and you can buy the token, you can use it for 5 years, and at the end of the 5 years you can then resell the token given someone else wants to buy it. But what we're creating is this kind of marketplace where people can come in and out of the project in a more liquid and seamless way. This is one of the things that we have seen from previous generations of eco-villages that has been a little bit hard, where it is hard to come in and it is hard to get out because of the ways that land ownership works in this society. So this liquidity that is then created by being able to resell the access rights to the community is going to be implemented as soon as the project goes live. So the go live event happens once all of the construction is completed and we have raised the entire 5 million euros for the development of the space. And we expect this to take 2 to 3 years, depending on the token sale, depending on how that goes. And as soon as we're able to have the real estate milestone completed, then the DAO will be able to enact a flag within a smart contract, which effectively means that all the tokens become liquid and they're transferable, which means that you can potentially pass on those access rights to other members or anyone that would like to hold the token for that purpose. So, TDF token, what does it mean? What is a token? Well, a token is a representation of values that is stored on chain, and through cryptography we're able to prove that a certain wallet is the rightful owner of this piece of digital information. This is how we can enable you to hold access rights on chain and being able to transfer those rights to other wallets in the future. And in our case, our token is deployed onto the CELO network. So CELO is becoming a layer 2 of Ethereum, which means that it's a highly efficient network. It doesn't use much energy. The entire network, I believe, uses something like 2 or 3 households worth of energy. And on top of that, CELO has for a mission to build a regenerative economy. It wants to create a nature-backed economy, and it's based on the works of Charles Eisenstein. And what does that mean? It means that, in principle, they have for objective to hold in the treasury natural assets. What are natural assets? Well, natural assets are financial means that represent ecological improvement in this world. In the case of CELO, they currently hold some MOS tokens, which mean that they hold carbon credits, which mean that they're actually supporting reforestation projects around the world. And therefore, CELO is able to call itself a carbon negative chain. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to deploy on CELO. But on top of that, CELO is also highly effective. And so it means that the cost of transactions is below 1 cent. So for example, if you want to buy TDF tokens or you want to use your TDF tokens, it really has a very low gas fee in order to do that, as opposed to if you were doing it on Bitcoin, which would have really high gas fees and really high energetical cost and therefore ecological costs associated with it. Governance. How do we do governance with a TDF token? Well, as I mentioned earlier, we want to create a system that empowers individuals to hold governance in this project, not only based on their financial stake in the project, But we do recognize that the financial stake is one aspect. So your token holdage in TDF tokens means that you will get voting power through that token directly. But what will bring you even more governance rights is if you actually use this token to come and spend time at TDF, and we call this proof of presence. So by coming to TDF, using the tokens for redeeming them for bookings, we can prove on-chain that you actually came and spent time. And then you have a check-in procedure with your space host when you arrive on the land, so we can actually verify that you are actually present on the land. And then finally, we also have proof of sweat, which is simply an indicator and a trace on-chain of how much work did you actually contribute to the DAO. And so your proof of sweat simply corresponds to the total number of tokens that you earned from doing work for the project. So let's say you are a gardener, you earn 10 TDF tokens every month for your work. Now that means that you will accrue those 10 TDF tokens, which hold a governance right in their own sake. But you're also able to resell those 10 TDF tokens, say if you want to exit the project or if you need some financial resources. However, the proof of sweat tokens that you will have accumulated, which will be 10 sweat tokens, so at the same ratio as the native token, that will give you even more governance power. And because you can keep coming back every year, now that means that you can accumulate those governance power over time. So if you come to TDF every year for 10 years, now that means that every year you'll be collecting 10 proof of presence. Now the final piece of this equation is that we also put a decay function on how this total cumulative governance accrues. So if you are collecting presence for 10 years, instead of having 10 times 10 voting power, the older governance tokens will decrease in governance power. So after 10 years, maybe they will be worth 50% of the value or something like that, to account for the fact that more recent stays and more recent work effectively corresponds better to the reality of the project, and that we believe that you'll be able to make better governance decisions if you spend a lot of time recently or if you worked a lot on the project recently. Make sense? That's not how it works in most DAOs. So, why would one want to buy TDF tokens? Well, as you have seen, the TDF tokens is a way that you can get perpetual access rights in the TDF community. It's also a way to get governance right in that community and also to be able to collect proof of presence by coming and spending time on the land. But further than that, the value of the TDF tokens is actually backed by access to real estate. You can, for each token, you have 1 night spent per year forever. So this is real estate access rights. You can compare it to a timeshare. It's basically a better version of a timeshare that also gives you governance rights. But TDF is more than simply a co-living development. TDF is a regenerative village. TDF holds within its boundaries, it holds food production, it holds water retention, landscape. So we're going to be building lakes in the future, we're building a natural pond. The aim is to conserve water on the soil as long as possible, since water is a big topic in Portugal. And there has been proven examples of how you can create a water retention landscape, including in the most arid deserts, and how we are able to regenerate even those lands. And once this water infrastructure is in place, that enables us obviously to move into food production. So we currently already have a vegetable farm that's producing vegetables for about 50% of our needs at TDF. We also planted a food forest with over 1,000 trees, which is going to come into maturation within like the next 4 or 5 years. And we're going to keep adding diversity to it. And we have reforestation project. And now all of these natural zones are actually natural assets. We are able to quantify the amount of carbon that gets sequestrated in our soils by using the Open Forest Protocol, which enables us to track the total biomass growth of a forest, which means that in time we will be able to issue carbon credits for these. We're also looking at how we can track increases in biodiversity and how we can track increases in water retention, and with the belief that these natural systems will eventually hold a financial value in our society. And lastly, the TDF ecosystem is also a host to a whole internal economy. we facilitate our members to launch businesses on the ground. And so by having more economic activity within the bounds of our village, that means that part of the profit that each of these businesses will generate will benefit the growth of the TDF treasury, and that in turn should benefit the value of the TDF token. Because as a TDF holder and as anyone that holds governance rights within a TDF project, I means that I find attractive. So in our case, it could be, for example, purchasing more land to build more real estate on it. And by the way, for every increase in real estate that we can develop, meaning that we can build more occupancies, that means that we're actually able to issue more tokens in the future. So if the project is successful, if we have a burgeoning economy and a growing market, that means that more people are coming into the project, which means that we can effectively mint new tokens to satisfy that demand. So, in conclusion, the TDF token is a pioneering way to distribute access and governance rights on-chain. We are here to create a new model for how we can live together regeneratively, leaving a positive trace on our planet, on our local ecosystem, working with nature and with local social economic contexts in order to leave a positive trace. Over the last years, we spent a lot of time and energy in developing this model. We're now inviting 300 dreamers to come and join us to be part of this initiative, to come and make TDF one of their homes. We hope you will join us, come and volunteer, come and spend time, come and discover the space and the people behind it, and see if you would like to live here. We want to develop this as a blueprint for how future regenerative villages can fundraise and can distribute these access and governance rights, and creating a more distributed way of doing real estate. The TDF token went live in July on CELO mainnet, and we're going to be continuing to further the development of the real estate project and the technology and the team. So TDF is a blueprint to creating this regenerative way of life. We have a thriving community of people who have been coming through the space. We've been hosting events on topics such as regenerative finance, permaculture, regeneration, arts, and everything in between. And we're inviting you to come and spend time here and to get ownership of this project through our token. And this is an opportunity to hold a real estate token, to hold a crypto token that is actually backed by value in the real world. This is possibly the first time that a regenerative village has this level of technological integration, and that you are able, as anyone on the internet, to take part in this thriving economy. And not only are you able to take part in it through buying the token, but this is an invitation for you to come and play, to come and be one of us, to come and build this regenerative future that we all know is possible.